It has been an unthinkable 21 games since the last time a Hawkeye quarterback has thrown for 200 yards in a game. Why that changes this week against Michigan State.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Glad to have you aboard with us today. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio here in the state of Iowa, including currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network, where you can hear me each weekday from noon to 2 with stations in Des Moines, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Quad Cities, and Sioux City. You can catch me there. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today, we are going to break down the matchup against Michigan State. Get ready for this one as we turn the page away from the USC loss, a deep dive into some of the numbers from Michigan State and why Iowa has a chance to have a huge offensive game once again. We'll also be joined by Elliot Clough. He was in Iowa City on Tuesday for the Kirk Ferentz press conference, along with the player availability. We'll get his thoughts on that. Have some topics also to throw around with Elliot, including who's going to get the loudest ovation and senior day coming up Saturday at Kinnick Stadium. We'll wrap things up as we take a look back at what just went final a little bit ago. Iowa's big win against Southeast Missouri State. We got you covered on that one, a little rapid reaction podcast style for you on the basketball front. But let's get into it. And the final matchup this season at Kinnick Stadium as Michigan State comes to town. Michigan State team that is certainly reeling after starting off the year 3-0. They have lost 7 consecutive games, and there's been a lot of ugliness there. Jonathan Smith, their head coach, you wonder if he's heading back home. Oregon State's open, where he played quarterback and coached before. If that's a destination, he's kind of trying to pull that escape hatch and get out early before the posse gets him. Is that a possibility? Certainly would make a whole lot of sense in that direction. We saw that Sparty team a year ago over in East Lansing. Iowa played one of their worst football games of the year a year ago in East Lansing. And I thought they were going to take another step this year. At minimum, I thought they were going to be a bowl team. I knew they did a lot of work in the transfer portal. I thought they were, at minimum, getting to that 6 wins this season. And obviously, that is not going to be the case for Michigan State. And mentioned at the top, the number that's out there, the last time an Iowa quarterback threw for over 200 yards in a game. Not a real high bar in today's college football. You actually look at it, you have to go all the way back to Cade McNamara in game 1 of last season of 2024. 21 games. Iowa has not had a passer throw for 200 yards in a game. Now that has a chance to change. And what we've seen out of this Iowa football team, and certainly during the month of October, is against the lesser foes, they have dominated. Now, teams that they're even with, or maybe a slightly above below, it hasn't gone very well. But the teams that they're better, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the domination that we've seen from Iowa in both of those games certainly gives me hope that that's what we're going to see on Saturday. And for everydayers out there, I am not exactly the most optimistic Hawkeye fan. I don't want to set myself up for disappointment, I guess. Maybe that's a reason for it. Or just watching these teams for the last 45 years has just built me this way. And, well, we all got a lot of scar tissue, certainly, as Hawkeye fans. But back to this one. The matchup is incredibly compelling. I think you're going to see Kamari Moulton go over for 100 yards rushing for the first time this season. I think he's going to have a big performance. Both sides of the ball, Michigan State has some major, major issues. First, you look at their offensive line, and some of the numbers from this O-line this season are just unthinkable. They lead the Big Ten in tackles for loss given up this year. Along that offensive line, they've been young, they've been injured. Aiden Childs, he's got banged up behind that. And Michigan State mentioned them last year. It was Aiden Childs. Now, he was terribly inconsistent a year ago, and that kind of continued with him this year. But now he's banged up. He was out. They've gone with their backup quarterback a little bit, who threw for over 300 yards a couple of weeks ago against Michigan State in Milojovic. He's a guy that is much different than Aiden Childs. He's not the same kind of athlete. He's not going to run around and make plays like Aiden Childs can. But you couple it with a really good receiver, and Nick Marsh. He's really, really talented. Now, as we saw a week ago, what talented wide receivers can do against you. Still, I just think that this is an Iowa game where they're going to cook. They're going to be able to do whatever they want out there. And as we've seen the emergence of DJ Vonnegut, and we're still waiting for what's going on at that wide receiver position. Iowa came out last week, and I love the game plan is they got USC on their heels defensively early on by throwing the football, making plays. Jacob Gill going up the sideline, the fourth down call, getting into the end zone. They did different things and had an opportunity to open it up. You're back at home. It's the final time. Let's loosen the reins a little bit. Let's throw the ball a little bit more. Let's see if you can get Sam Phillips 4 or 5 touches in the football game. Can you do a little bit more with Dayton Howard, who's had a couple of big catches this year? Can you target him a couple of times? How about finally a good game for Reese Vanderzee now that he's back healthy, getting him out there? I just want to see more out of this passing game, and it might be too much to ask. And because Michigan State also struggles in rush defense, that this is just going to be play it conservative, run the football, get out of there with the victory, and get it. But because of what they did against Minnesota and against Wisconsin, I think we're looking at a blowout. I think this is going to be one where Iowa cruises to victory. And then you throw in the fact called the Senior Day vibe. So earlier today here on Tuesday, we heard from Kirk Ferentz at his press conference. He mentioned 27 guys going through Senior Day. 27 guys were listed in the game notes that we got. 28 guys, though, is what Kirk mentioned. The one that is going to be walking, that was a little bit of a surprise, is Cohen Entringer, the Hawkeye safety. Of course, a starter for the first time this year, went to Big Ten football media days. Really good getting to know him, talking with him. His family was with him too, which was really cool. As beloved of a guy as you're going to find in the football program, what a leader he was. Made the highlight level play, missed the tackle on the punt return in the Big Ten championship a couple of years ago, races back 90 yards to make the tackle before the returner for Michigan could get into the end zone. That's what you get out of Cohen Entringer. Hustle, heart, determination, and a great leader. That would be tough to lose a guy like that when you still think that there might be another year and more upside too. And we've seen this in the past. We've seen Amani Hooker depart early, Geno Stone, who was a late round selection. Both of those guys still sticking around in the NFL. Still, you wonder, Geno Stone was a 7th rounder. Now he got a second contract, and that's the biggest thing for those guys that are not going to be a first 2, 3 selection, a first, second, third round selection in the NFL draft. Interesting. Just one to file away in the back of your mind. Speaking of that, we're going to talk with Elliot Clough. Who's going to get the biggest pop here at Senior Day? The quarterback normally gets a pretty good ovation. There's been some ones that haven't been quite as good in the past. Mark Gronowski, though, just a 1-year rental for the Hawkeyes this year. Be interesting to see how that one plays out. We'll talk a little bit about that and get his thoughts on what senior is going to get talked about here, plus some other news and notes from the Iowa football press conferences from Tuesday. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, Locked On Hawkeyes. Elliot Clough talking Hawkeyes and talking about Senior Day. That's next. Locked On Hawkeyes. Well, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything for who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. And not just that, they got you covered for all your football action, including, yes, the Iowa Hawkeyes, where Iowa a huge favorite this week against Michigan State. Hawkeyes a 16.5-point choice against Sparty in this one. If you live out of state, they got player props available for you as well outside of the state of Iowa. They got you covered on that front. You can put together a same game parlay, making that fun a little bit more, plus live betting while the game is happening. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Let's head to Iowa City. Elliot Clough, HawkeyeInsider.com. HawkeyeInsider.com. He joins us part of 24/7 Sports. Hello, Elliot. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Ken?
Doing okay. How's the team doing? Do you around there every Tuesday when you guys have an opportunity following the Saturday game? Do you notice a difference? They've lost 2 straight, obviously. knowing that ultimately the college football playoff, that goal has now been taken off the table. Any difference in the football team that you've noticed?
Not that I, could necessarily get a sense of by anything they said or anything like that. Of course, the message is always going to be that they're focused on the task ahead and beating Michigan State over the weekend. It is a different feel. It's one of those ethereal things that you can't really maybe put into words or can't really, touch, smell, taste, whatever. But it is a different feel at these pressers now when things don't necessarily maybe matter as much as they did in terms of those big goals. But the messaging is going to remain the same. I mean, we talked to Mark Gronowski today and he said, I want to finish this career off right, do it for guys like Logan Jones and Gennings who have been here for several years. So, it might be a little bit different, but, you'll never hear anything different from Iowa players or anybody from the staff.
Not a ton of news, at least from the different quotes that I've seen up until this point. I guess the biggest one, Leighton Jones was there, who came in and has come in a few different times this year for Bo Stevens. Leighton Jones mentioned that he has been working with the ones at this point. I think they hope that they'll get Stevens back, but it's kind of wait and see. And you guys will hear a little bit more from Kirk, I'm sure, on that front. But Leighton Jones, a little bit of thought on him. He's going to be certainly an anticipated starter for next season. And what you've seen out of the other guy from Indianapolis, we talked a ton about Trevor Lough, but Leighton Jones had a nice year as a backup this year.
Yeah, one thing that I remember, I think it was from the spring actually, is that Bo Stevens brought up Leighton. I'm not sure if it was unprompted, but he did bring him up in the spring during one of those availability windows. That might have been the summer actually. I'm not positive, but he said, if I wasn't back, if I wasn't here, Leighton Jones would have started this entire season, and that's probably true. I mean, he's a kid that has played some solid snaps over his time. He's not Bo Stevens. That's clear. He's a backup for a reason. Bo is there because he's more experienced. I think Bo might be, I need to look at the roster, but I think Bo might weigh a little bit more. But Jones is a guy that was a Barnett recruit, was a Barnett guy. So as George has started to sort of cultivate this offensive line into the picture that he, wanted to create or to paint when he first arrived here, Jones is one of those cornerstone guys that he brought in those initial classes that has been here and will be expected to be here through the finish of his college career. I think the endorsement by Stevens wasn't, just a passing thing for him to say. I think he meant it. And Jones, I think, he's been serviceable, right? He hasn't looked like he's going to be all Big Ten or anything like that by the end of the season, but definitely has some places to grow, has some room to grow, and could be something like that in a couple of years to come.
I know this is part of the VIP over there, but maybe you can share what you can with us. Caden Weegan and his future. What did he have to say today?
Yeah, so he shared today that it's last year it was still kind of up in the air about his eligibility. He said he heard that he might have another year. He heard that he doesn't have any left. But by what he said today, it sounds like he's moving on.
Okay.
He's been with the program for quite a while, and it sounds like Saturday will be his last game in Kinnick Stadium as a Hawkeye. But I tell you what, bringing a 30-year-old around for another year of eligibility would be pretty impressive. That'd be one of the biggest wins of the Kirk Ferentz era.
Diego Pavia-like, right? Get him in for another season and make that happen. Speaking of that, we look at senior day. Quarterbacks usually get the biggest ovation. Gronowski, though, just a one-year guy. I'm sure there's going to be a big pop, even with some of the frustrations that are there in portions of the fan base. Outside of the quarterback, though, what senior do you believe is going to get the loudest ovation? Who's going to be the guy that gets that big serenation when his name is called and he runs out to his family?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I would probably say Logan Jones because he's been through, he was there right when the offensive line really was struggling. And he was part of the anchor you could say he was the anchor that was pulled up from the depths, so to speak, or the anchor of the offensive line in that he was solid the last 3 years and really showed off some athleticism, really earned the respect of that room, really was a leader despite all the turnover at quarterback too. I don't know how many quarterbacks he's been through because you go Petrus, you go Cade McNamara, Deacon Hill, Deacon Hill, Brendan Sullivan, Jackson Stratton, Mark Gronowski, Hank Brown. I don't know if he played any with Hecklinski at all this year, but Hecklinski got to see the field a little bit. I think that was with Mislinski, but yeah. Alex Padilla. Can't forget about Padilla. Can't forget about Joe Lavis either. Yeah. So Logan has been through it all. As he would say, a lot of hands up under him. But to me, I think he's one that deserves a big pop. I think TJ Hall does, because he was ripped apart for the little bit that he played against Nebraska, and then just really reached an elite level this season. Like, he's all Big Ten, in my opinion. Xavier Wampa is another one that has, kind of gone through the fire a little bit and really played at a high level this season. Excuse me. Jennings Dunker could very well be a first-round draft pick, so he's going to get some love. And he might get some love just because of his big, flowing red hair and personality.
That was my thought. I thought he's got personality. He's goofy. People know him because of the big, flowing red hair. I think it's going to be him or Weechin. Those would be my two votes, and people love Caden Weechin. Yeah,
Weechin will definitely get a pop. I guess I was thinking more so about the guys on the front lines of the offense, but yeah, he definitely should. I mean, he's reached the echelon of one of the greatest to do it as a returner at Iowa. I mean, he's up there with DeJean. He's up there. I
agree
for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. Mark Gronowski has caused defensive assistant coaches to start looking up the bars in Iowa City at both Michigan State and Nebraska. That's a phenomenal story that they named the trick plays after bars in Iowa City. Now some poor grad assistant in Michigan State and at Nebraska is going to be on Google Maps trying to figure that out next time he hears one of them. That's fascinating that he shared that nugget with you.
Yeah, that was kind of fun for him to share that. He also shared that some of their sneak plays are named after shoe brands. Talking about the tush push, he said they call that one Adidas, and my first question was, at a Nike school. So they kind of have some fun with it. Knowing Tim Lester, or getting to know Tim Lester a little bit after the last couple of years, it doesn't really surprise me that he kind of comes up with that stuff. It's unique. It's easily remembered, right? And have a little bit of fun out there while you're playing some football.
So talking to the guys at senior day, that's always a thing. Mood, though, two incredibly difficult losses, a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda. The great thing about Iowa football and Kirk Ferentz, they don't get too high, they don't get too low. How did it feel today? How did they react in knowing that even that slim margin that was out there that we talked about last week about possibility at 9-3 getting the playoff? Well, now that's completely gone. What was the mood of the players?
Yeah, it's pretty steady, Eddie. I think the thing that I said at the beginning was just that, you're not going to hear anything about, the season's over. You're just not going to hear that kind of stuff with the type of players that Kirk Ferentz brings to Iowa City. So there's that, but there's also there was a feel of, the guys that we talk to as well are generally upperclassmen, and you get the read that they really do stick to that 24-hour rule no matter what. Yes, they wanted more out of this season. They were hoping for more. They very well could have gotten more if 5 or 6 plays go a little differently. But, ask Weechin if he thought he was in on Saturday on that catch. And, he kind of shared a laugh and said, yeah, I fell in a swamp too after the catch, or I guess the non-catch. So able to laugh it off, but still, sharing that, they would love to be where some of those goals are, but it's just not attainable. What they're going to try to do is finish out the season. And the sense that you get from those guys that they really do mean that. It does, just flatly, it sucks that they won't be able to find a spot in the college football playoff. Those hopes aren't there anymore, but they're going to try to finish out the season. And that's just the culture that Kirk Ferentz has established here.
So along those lines, and I know it's a couple of weeks too early before this question will be answered definitively, if it at all. Trent and I were speculating earlier. I mean, just when they do get to a bowl game, and they will, how does Ferentz handle the quarterback position, knowing that Gronowski is moving on, knowing that Hecklinski is probably the leader in the clubhouse to be that guy next year? Obviously, the 15 practices, the Hecklinski will get a ton of run in those, one would assume, with the ones. But with the bowl game itself, too early for sure, but how do you think that Ferentz and Lester handle the quarterback when the bowl game gets here?
Yeah, I mean, unless an injury happens or they get blown out or Iowa blows somebody out, I think Mark Gronowski plays every snap. That's just that's the way Mark was talking about it today. He said, yeah, we have 2 more games and a bowl game. To me, that makes it sound like he's going to finish it out. He's obviously not going to be, a top 3, top 5, top 6 round pick in the NFL draft coming up here. So, and Mark doesn't strike me as a guy that would opt out of a game, especially that he's probably not going to get drafted. We talked about Hecklinski a little bit, but don't count out Hank Brown at this point, man. Those 15 practices that they get leading up to the bowls, everything that Kirk has said is that it's going to be a legitimate competition. And, I've heard, talk of, and this isn't from anybody behind the scenes or anything, but people speculating that Hank Brown will be gone. It's like, well, the window isn't till January, so there's going to be a legitimate competition, and whoever wins it, whoever doesn't win it, might stick around, they might not. We'll find out, but it is going to be a legitimate competition between Hecklinski and Brown. I'm not ruling out Hank Brown yet.
Elliot Clough, 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. Elliot, as always, thank you, brother. We'll run you down next Tuesday if your schedule allows. Thanks for doing this.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Yep, good to talk to you. Elliot Clough as we check in on the Hawks.
Thanks as always to Elliot for his time over in Iowa City at the press conferences, breaking things down from over there. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes, a look back at what we saw Tuesday night. Big win against SEMO, Southeast Missouri State. Ben McCollum's got his Iowa basketball team off to a great start. Rapid reaction to the Hawkeye win. When we come back, we're talking hoops on Locked On Hawkeyes. College football is here. We're coming down to the final weeks. We couldn't be more excited still for the rest of the season. Your final tailgate at Kinnick Stadium, the rivalries, energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping for you at checkout. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. You can take a look right now. Senior Day against Michigan State. There's some great deals on there all across the stadium. And you know there's not a bad seat in the house at Kinnick. And what I love about the Game Time app is that you can see where you're going to be inside the stadium, what your view is going to be like, and no surprise fees. That's right. Keeping it easy for you. What you see is what you pay. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I bought tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, and glad to have you aboard with us. We got a busy week still in front of us. We're going to be talking with our man Matt Sheehan from Locked On Spartans. Crossover edition coming your way later in the week. Todd Brommelkamp will stop in for his weekly appearance here on the show as we get ready for the weekend and Michigan State. And of course, rapid reaction after that one goes final. We got some basketball still in front of us. A big Thursday as well, as we will see the Iowa women in action against Baylor. We will also see the matchup for the Iowa men against Chicago State. Let's take a look back at what we saw, though, here earlier this evening, and that was Iowa polishing off SEMO, Southeast Missouri State. Now, this is a Southeast Missouri State team that had Missouri on the ropes. I don't think it's going to be a great Missouri team, but still, that was eye-opening. Of these bye games, this is a team that is okay. It's still a lower-rung D1 team, and I'm not going to try to sell you a bill of goods that this was some great basketball team. But Iowa, they look good right away. I mean, they were ready to go. They were engaged as they always are. And though they score 99 points, they do it incredibly efficiently. Over at Ken Pomeroy, basketball fans, you're going to hear me talk about Ken Pom. You're going to hear me talk about Bart Torvik. You're going to hear me talk about Evan Maya. The analytical sites, I think, can add a little bit more depth to what we're seeing, not just what you're watching on the hardwood, but then adding some numbers and some analytical parts to it. And if you're new here or if you're an everydayer, you're going to hear plenty of those here in the coming months. Looking at this squad, though, and what they did, a couple of bright spots. You start again with Sturtz. He's just so smooth. so heady in this one. 15-9, 15 points, 9 assists in the game. He controls the pace. He is not going to be taken off his spot. It's going to be some wars come Big Ten time, and some of the point guards that they're going to see from across the landscape. It's going to be tough. Braden Smith, a lot of people's preseason National Player of the Year, and there's 3 or 4 other elite top flight point guards, along with a lot of other really good ones. It's going to be tough this season. Cam Manoir, really good performance out of him. That was nice to see. Cooper Koch knocked down an open 3. Done some good things out there. It was really the bench, though, I think that stood out. 50 points off the bench in this one. And in a day where Isaiah Howard, maybe he didn't quite have it, you saw Fulgaris do what he does. And he's going to be a big piece here. He plays 26 minutes in the game, and I think that's 26-30 when they get into Big Ten play. I think that's kind of likely, or next week against Ole Miss, what you're looking at. But maybe the brightest spot to me was the return of Brendan Howson in a bigger role. Seeing Hassan out there now playing, shooting the ball like you see. He missed a ton of the offseason. He's been dealing with injuries, getting back in shape, getting back to 100%, getting into basketball shape. I think is going to be a big thing for Hassan, but they're going to need his shooting. Hassan was a guy that I think a lot of people had penciled in, or maybe even a pen, that was going to be a starter with this team. And with Howard being inconsistent still at this point in his career, maybe that's something that can change. In fact, one thing that I'll pose to you listeners out there, and hit us up on the comment section if you're watching us on YouTube, and hit subscribe, is how long until we get Fulgaris, Hassan into the starting lineup? It doesn't happen as early as next week. And as we found out before the season began, and something that was relayed to us in our interview that we had, our one-on-one with Bennett Sturtz, is they don't know who's starting the game until basically they get ready to go out on the floor. They don't know. The reason for that, Ben McCollum likes to keep his guys engaged, everybody locked in. But I do wonder if we're going to see that change. And I think the most likely thing that you would see, if it's both Fulgaris in the game along with Hassan, is that to the bench would be Isaiah Howard and probably Tavian Banks. Banks a year ago at Drake, he did come off the bench. He's a guy that, plus he can do a multitude of different things. I think he is a really interesting bench piece at the very least. Again, if you're looking to change things up. One other takeaway from the win against Southeast Missouri State, got to mention again, Trevin Urach. His passing going back to the Xavier game, you see him in that high post action. And I know I've talked about it here before. If you missed it, though, so called a ton of Trevin's games the last 3 years at West Des Moines Valley, covering high school basketball and high school sports here in Central Iowa, winning 3 consecutive state championships. That's a lot of games you're stacking up year after year, and seeing him. His older brother, Drew, was a really good basketball player, good football player as well, but Drew was like 6'2", 6'3". And Trev, like him, was a guard growing up. And then he hit this growth spurt. He is the 6'11" dude that we see today. And at times you can see maybe his body is still trying to grow into that size, that height that he got. But you still see a lot of those guard skills when he was younger. His ability to handle the ball, his ability to shoot the ball, the passing ability. He led Valley in assists last year. How many 6'10" guys do you see at the high school level that are doing that? He has a very interesting skill set, coupled with his size, just the girth that he has. They're going to need him this year. It's not always going to be pretty. It's going to be a little awkward at times with Trevin Urach, but he is a guy that is going to be a piece that's going to have to help them. There might be a game or two during the Big Ten play this year that they're going to need Urach to go out there. Speaking of the freshman, Tate Sage again. I mean, talk about dead wrong. I'm like, what are they doing here? This is a guy down at Oklahoma nobody wanted. He takes his team to 3 consecutive state championships, and he's looking at a mid-major guy. I told you I had a scout that told me, I think maybe even as a stretch for Drake, might be a leading scorer if he was on Drake this year. That dude is an absolute stud. And what a find, again, by McCollum and company. He just looked really good out there. Like what they have at Combs. I like this team. And we don't know exactly what they are. Xavier turned out to be not nearly what I think a lot of people thought they were going to be in year number 1 with them, but we will find out next week. That matchup against Ole Miss, and then either Utah and Grand Canyon after that, we'll know a whole lot more. Going to be exciting, fun times. Big one also on the women's front on Thursday night. Iowa takes on Chicago State on the men's side, and then the matchup against Baylor. We'll talk more about that. Plus, at that point, we will also know the decision of Addison Bjorn and what she's going to be doing and what her commitment is going to be. Sounds like we will find that out on Thursday. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. A lot more coming here throughout the course of the week. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. I am Trent Condon, and thank you for also making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.